thoughts on Ilia Topuria and Ilia Topuria as a fighter? How do you feel about just the overall fight?
É uma grande luta. Ele é um grande lutador, mas eu não preciso provar mais nada pra ninguém. Quem eu sou, o que eu já fiz dentro do cage. Essa luta chegou numa oportunidade gigantesca. Eu vou nocautear esse cara. Essa é ela.
Who's gonna knock this guy out?
Charles Oliveira dismisses all trash talk, confident his past achievements will silence critics once and for all at UFC 317.
É muito foda que eu não gosto de ficar falando muito que tudo que a gente fala, você tá ligado, né? Mas tudo burburinho, né? Mas eu acho que já passou a fase disso, né? São 15 anos dentro do UFC. Né, eu entrei um menino lá dentro, eu era só um moleque lá dentro, igual tudo que eu falei pesa, né? Eu sou só um menino no meio dos leões. Hoje eu me sinto um leão no meio dos leões, e um leão diferenciado, um leão embaçado. O último, o Charles desiste, eu fui lá e atropelei. O último, o Charles não tem mão, eu fui lá e nocauteei. O Charles não tem o sei o que lá, eu fui lá e fiz. Então eu acho que assim, é tão bagulho, são tantas coisas loucas que, tipo, se a ideia é essa de ficar falando, de ficar cogitando pra ver se vai me abalar, cara, tipo, eu vejo os negócios, tipo, se é que vocês estão longe, vocês não estão vendo, mas se você perguntar pros meninos que andam comigo, você vê, tipo, eu dou risada, tá ligado? Porque
Charles Oliveira doesn't feel the need to clap back. To him, actions have always spoken louder than words. As questions about his durability resurface ahead of UFC 317, the former lightweight champion is staying locked in on what really counts, delivering inside the octagon. On June 28th in Las Vegas, he'll step into the cage to face Ilia Topuria, an undefeated knockout artist making his highly anticipated debut at lightweight. While Oliveira keeps a calm and focused demeanor, Tapuria brings bold predictions and sharp words, claiming the fight won't even see the second round.
Faltaba, he dicho la verdad, tiene 10 derrotas, no he dicho otra cosa. Tiene 10 derrotas, 5 por knockout, 4 por sumisión, 1 por decisión. Dice que es la división más difícil que hay. Cuando él estaba peleando en 145, hasta Cub Swanson le ha metido una paliza. Ahí se tiene que acabar la conversación. Algo que no pudo conseguir en 145 libras, lo consiguió en 155, que se convirtió en campeón del mundo. Entonces, ¿por qué esa división es más difícil que de la que yo vengo? O sea, no le encuentro ninguna lógica, y por eso dije también que parece que no se ha leído ni la hoja de un periódico. Así que si eso es una falta de respeto, yo no sé desde cuándo decir la verdad es una falta de respeto. Yo nunca mezclo lo personal con lo profesional, ¿verdad? No tengo ningún problema con Charles. Seguramente una vez nuestras carreras se hayan acabado, podamos estar juntos, pasar un buen rato, cenar, comer, lo que haga falta, pero esto es un deporte, ¿sabes? Dentro de un octógono.
The matchup is already one of the most hyped fights of the year. Tapuria, who formerly held the featherweight crown, has been on a tear through the UFC ranks, knocking down opponents in 5 straight fights. He's racked up a perfect 16-0 record, defeating elite fighters like Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski along the way. But despite his accomplishments, it's the power in his hands and his unwavering confidence that have made him a star. According to him, Oliveira stands still too often and gets hit too much, a combination Tapuria sees as tailor-made for a short night.
Bueno, en primer lugar agradecerle a Charles, la verdad, por haber aceptado el reto, ¿no? Algo que Islam no hizo y tiene que pagar el precio por Islam. Me da mucha pena por Charles, pero bueno, al final del día es mi trabajo. Voy a cumplir otro sueño más que siempre tuve, que era convertirme en campeón de otra división más, por lo que el resultado será el mismo de siempre, salir victorioso y seguir con el invicto.
Tapuria's move up to lightweight wasn't just a strategy, it was a necessity. After repeatedly struggling to make the featherweight limit, the weight cuts started to take a toll on his body and mind. He described the process as so brutal that even basic things like water felt more valuable than material rewards. The suffering eventually outweighed the success. Choosing long-term health and performance over division loyalty, he vacated the featherweight title and stepped up to 155 pounds, chasing new glory in a division that now finds itself wide open.
So with this extra 10 pounds, how much better do you think you'll be able to perform inside the octagon?
You are gonna see me at 155 that I'm gonna touch someone and I'm gonna take his lights out. I don't need to touch his chin. I just touch his head and it will explode. I feel so powerful at that weight class, so stable in the ground. Like, do you want to wrestle? Let's wrestle. No problem. And I have the gas tank for 5 days, not 5 rounds.
With Islam Makhachev stepping away from lightweight to pursue a welterweight clash against Jack Della Maddalena, the belt is up for grabs. Tapuria originally hoped to face Makhachev himself, targeting the dominant champion as the man to beat. But with Makhachev no longer in the immediate picture, Oliveira became the next logical opponent, and one who brings an entirely different challenge. Known for his high-level grappling and dangerous finishing ability, Oliveira's history is filled with highlight reel moments and comeback wins that defied the odds. Despite the criticism he's faced over the years, being called a quitter, having his chin questioned, Oliveira has rewritten his legacy through sheer grit. He holds multiple UFC records, including most finishes, most submission victories, and the most performance bonuses.
He was a guy who was kind of known as a guy who fell apart.
A quitter a little bit. Yeah.
Cub Swanson knocked him out. A bunch of guys had beat
Max
him.
Holloway had like that weird neck thing going on.
Not gonna mess around. He maybe is. This. Oh no. Oh, looks like an injury.
Then everybody was calling him a quitter. All this, and it's like,
and he just turned a corner and then became the baddest in the weight class.
Yeah.
And not just the baddest in the weight class, but one of the best in the sport. When he knocked out Chandler, he beat the shit out of Gaethje. When he was putting it on people, you got to go, God damn, he's good.
I'm curious to see if he comes back and gets back to that Islam fight.
His mindset remains steady even in the face of pre-fight trash talk. Tapuria has taunted him publicly, from joking about him needing a pillow to encouraging fans to vote on how he should finish the former champ. But Oliveira doesn't bite. After over 15 years in the sport, he's not rattled by trash talk. He sees it as noise. Entertaining maybe, but irrelevant when the cage door shuts.
I found the first time, I think, like on record, you were asked about Ilia. I think it was at the media day before your fight with Michael Chandler, and you were very respectful. You said, you know, Ilia is someone who talks the talk, walks the walk, and he would have a lot of challenges at lightweight, and he would be a tough fight. All respect there. Do you feel like he's given you that same respect in the lead up to this fight?
Ele encontrou a entrevista, que acho que é a primeira vez que você falou publicamente do Ilia, que foi na coletiva lá da tua luta com o Chandler, que você falou que ele era bom, muito bom, que ele falava e fazia, né? Mas o que você tem achado aí de tudo que ele fala?
Cara, sei lá, cada um
ele
tem
você tratou com o mesmo respeito que você?
Não, com certeza não.
No, definitely not. Didn't treat with the same respect.
Why do you think that is? Because you're obviously one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen. We know all the records and the history you've made. Do you think this is just how he acts towards all the opponents, or do you think there's something about you that has led to that lack of respect?
Por que você acha isso? Todo mundo sabe quem você é, tudo que você fez. Você acha que ele é assim com todos os adversários, ou tem alguma coisa com você que ele tá sendo desrespeitoso?
Cara, sei lá. Por tudo que ele vem falando. Mas, na realidade, dia 28 a gente sabe quem é quem. Todo mundo sabe que é o campeão da categoria, essa é real.
Man, I don't know. They've been saying a lot, but the fact of the matter is we're going to find out on June 28th. Everyone knows who the real champion is.
Stylistically, the fight offers a fascinating contrast. Both men prefer to pressure their opponents and keep the pace high. Tapuria uses calculated aggression and crisp boxing to break his opponents down, while Oliveira employs a more varied attack, seamlessly blending strikes with elite jiu-jitsu. Though Tapuria hasn't had to rely on his ground game much in the UFC, Oliveira respects it. Still, if the fight goes to the mat, the Brazilian is confident that he has the edge, as few can match his submission instincts.
Ilia Topuria, he's a little smaller against, I think he's a little smaller against the Charles, but he also has crazy hands, beautiful boxing, strong hands. Featherweight is featherweight, they're dangerous, but honestly lightweight is the craziest, hardest division in the UFC. This is challenge for him. Now we see how he adapt for that, you know, because featherweight is not lightweight. Lightweight is big difference.
In terms of physical advantages, Oliveira will walk into the cage taller and with a longer reach. These attributes could allow him to manage distance more effectively, especially early on, and possibly slow Tapuria's forward movement. However, Oliveira has emphasized that in MMA, size and stats only mean so much. Having once competed at featherweight himself, himself before settling in at lightweight, he knows how hard it can be to adjust to the bigger, stronger athletes in the division. He believes Tapuria will have to face that reality for the first time on fight night.
Yeah, and you obviously spend a lot of your days fighting at featherweight, and you moved up and you've done so well at lightweight, made a legacy. What do you think is going to be maybe the biggest advantage that you have with him coming up and not having experienced the highest level of this lightweight division before?
Você, claro, já lutou nas duas categorias, mas você se fez o seu legado no peso leve, né? O que você acha dele subindo agora pro leve, já lutando pelo título, sem ter essa experiência ainda na categoria?
Cara, com certeza é complicado, né? Cada pessoa é de uma forma, cada um vem de um jeito, né? Eu demorei um pouco para me adaptar no peso leve, né? Quando eu tava lutando de pena, né? E eu não sei da parte dele, mas a categoria peso leve é a categoria mais difícil que tem.
It's difficult, you know, everyone's different. You know, I obviously took a little bit of time to adapt to lightweight when I came up from featherweight, but you know, we're going to have to see. He doesn't have the experience yet fighting at this high level, so we're going to have to see.
Adding more heat to the event, Arman Tsarukyan has been named the official backup fighter for the main event. Tsarukyan, who narrowly edged out Oliveira in a split decision at UFC 300, was originally on track to challenge Makhachev before an injury derailed his title shot. Now healed and on standby, he's ready to step in should anything happen to either Oliveira or Topuria. His presence ensures that the event remains intact and that the title will be decided no matter what happens behind the scenes.
Charles, I'm curious. They announced that, or it's come out that Arman Tsarukyan will be the backup fighter for this title fight. If something crazy happened, would you be okay fighting him in a rematch on short notice?
Tá sendo falado aí que o Arman é o reserva. Se alguma coisa acontecer, você tá ok lutando com o Arman?
Cara, não sei se ele é o reserva, mas se você colocar isso aí, vambora, não tem o que fazer. Né? Ele é um cara gigante, é um cara também que fez grandes lutas, então por que não?
I don't know if he is the backup, but if that's what the UFC decides, then that's what we're going to do. You know, he's also a great guy and a great opponent, so we'll see.
And while most fans are split on who will emerge victorious, one voice has now added more intrigue to the conversation. Dustin Poirier, one of the most respected names in the lightweight division, has cast his vote, and he's backing Tapuria. In his view, Oliveira's biggest flaw has always been how often he gets hit. Poirier believes that against someone like Tapuria, who hits with intent and finishes with precision, that weakness could be fatal. Though he admits Oliveira has the tools to win if the fight goes to the ground, Poirier predicts that Tapuria's finishing ability will be the difference maker. With everything on the line, UFC 317 looks destined to deliver something unforgettable.
I think Ilia, man. I think he's going to be way undersized against Charles. I just don't, unless Charles can sub him, maybe if he hurts him, but it's going to be tough, I think. Because Charles gets hit a lot, you know, and Ilia puts people away. I'm excited about it.
Anthony Smith was quick to highlight what he sees as the biggest factor in the fight: defensive flaws. From his viewpoint, Oliveira has a clear weakness when it comes to taking damage. Smith noted the Brazilian's tendency to get into wild exchanges, absorb clean shots, and leave openings due to his chaotic style. In contrast, he sees Tapuria as far more composed and polished, a disciplined striker with clean boxing technique, sharp body work, and effective leg kicks. For Smith, Tapuria's overall fight IQ and structured approach make him a safer bet, especially if the bout stays on the feet. While Smith's take leaned heavily in favor of Tapuria,
I typically look at, when you get two guys like these two that are very, very good, then you start looking at their defensive responsibilities and who has the larger deficiency. That's 100% Charles Oliveira. He's so hittable. Yeah. He loves to fight into wars. Ilia Topuria does not engage in. He's super crisp, very, very clean boxer, but goes to the body well, leg kicks really well, so strategic and so well thought out, and has an incredibly high fight IQ. I just don't know how Charles Oliveira stays safe in any kind of striking range, fighting the way that he fights with Ilia Topuria. I just think that he's going to get hit hard. He's going to get hurt. And I don't know that he can take down Ilia Topuria. And if he did, I don't know that he would out-grapple him.
Tim Welch offered a more cautious and nuanced perspective. Though he acknowledged Tapuria's rise at featherweight has been near perfect, Welch questioned whether the move to lightweight might have come too quickly. He noted that Oliveira, with his awkward stance, stance, precise knees, and ability to control range presents a tricky puzzle that Tapuria hasn't faced before. Welch emphasized that the Brazilian's unpredictability and range-based offense could throw off Tapuria's more compact and boxing-heavy style, especially in a division where the margin for error is thinner. For Welch, the biggest unknown is how Tapuria's weapons will translate now that he's competing against heavier, more experienced opponents like Oliveira.
That's a dangerous fight. Marab calls it stupid to make Ilia Topuria fight Charles Oliveira before Islam Makhachev.
How is that?
Ilia Topuria says he got promised that he would fight for the title if he vacates.
By who? The security guard outside his room?
Yeah, he kind of hinted that he got promised that. I feel like Charles, Ilia.
That'd be fucking fire.
I think Ilia might batter him. The way Charles comes forward with those reckless knees.
And he's got the chin floating up high too.
Stands up tall like a really tall Muay Thai guy, and Ilia's like a low boxer. That's a dangerous fight for Charles.
Michael Chandler, who has stepped into the cage twice against Oliveira, brought a very personal layer to the analysis. From someone who has felt Oliveira's power and chaos up close, Chandler dismissed the idea that the former champ lacks durability. He pointed out that Oliveira not only thrives in high-stress exchanges, but also evolves under pressure. While he gave credit to Tapuria's accuracy, timing, and calm approach, Chandler stressed that putting Oliveira away is far more difficult than it appears. He believes that Tapuria is stepping into a new world at 155 pounds, one where he'll be tested in ways he hasn't before, particularly against someone as battle-hardened as Oliveira.
Lightweight division is being turned on its head. Islam Makhachev vacated. He's going to welterweight. We have a title fight pretty much a month away exactly right now for the vacant belt between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. I guess, are you surprised this is the way everything played out, from Islam not keeping the belt and it being like an interim or something to the fight we ultimately got for the vacant title?
No, I'm not surprised. You know, and I think maybe some of those rumors and stuff maybe played into my decision on why I wanted to fight Patty, why I wanted to get back in there. Obviously, if you look at the timing, I should have had a win against Oliveira. I messed that up. I should have had a win against Patty. I messed that up. I've had these great opportunities and they've just slipped through my fingertips. So if I would have beat Charles, I would be fighting Ilia for the title right now, you know, but this is the way the sport goes. I'm not surprised at all the craziness that's happening. I'm happy Ilia came up to 155. I'm happy Max is at 155. You got Poirier. Shoot, you got Poirier leaving the sport here in the next 6 weeks or whatever it is, which is crazy. You got Gaethje, you got Patty. There's a bunch of different stuff going on. So I'll be cage side for that fight to watch it, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, who do you think is going to win?
Man, it's tough. You don't bet against freaking Charles Oliveira because he's so dang good everywhere, and he's a really hard guy to beat. With that being said, Ilia Topuria's got some crazy power in his hands and crazy accurate strikes. So it'll be very interesting to see how that fight goes. You know, you gotta...
Looking at the broader picture, Luke Thomas viewed the fight not just as a clash of individuals, but as a marker of a shifting landscape in the UFC. While many fans were initially hoping for a Topuria versus Islam Makhachev showdown, Thomas sees just as much appeal in this matchup. For him, it's the contrast in approaches that makes it compelling. Oliveira's chaotic, risk-heavy style clashing with Topuria's tight, explosive striking. He also acknowledged the ripple effect of Makhachev's decision to move to welterweight, which could lead to new cross-divisional matchups involving contenders like Jack Della Maddalena, Sean Brady, or even Khamzat Chimaev. In Thomas's view, this fight is a key moment in a larger realignment across multiple divisions.
The number one fight that could have been made among all permutations was Islam Ilia. That's the best fight that could have been made. But the point I've been trying to make is that while that would be the most desirable one to choose, it's not like you're getting something bad even though you're not getting it. In other words, Tapuria against Oliveira for the lightweight belt is fire. I don't care what anybody else says, it's fire. And then I've been saying this whole time, Islam going up to 170 and seeing how he matches up there with Della Maddalena, potentially Brady, potentially Rachmanov, potentially Gary, potentially Buckley. I mean, any number of ways in which that could go.
Beneil Dariush, who has first-hand experience fighting Oliveira, shared a unique view of how the Brazilian might disrupt Tapuria's usual rhythm. He pointed out that Oliveira is particularly dangerous in the early rounds, when he applies intense forward pressure and constantly switches things up with knees, clinch attacks, and unpredictable bursts. Dariush believes this chaotic rhythm could prevent Tapuria from settling into the kind of clean, timing-based game he typically thrives on. on. According to him, if Oliveira is able to dictate the pace and tempo, especially early, it could shut down Tapuria's usual pathways to control.
I think it's a lot closer than people think. I think Charles is really tough. I think he's got a good chin. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He's got great striking. And what's going to be difficult for Ilia is Charles's striking is, I think, really dangerous against boxers, against good boxers. The way he throws his knees, the way he, clinches, and those are things you can do to slow down Ilia. Because, for example, a good boxer will dip low to fake or feint to go get in on the inside, and that's times where Charles will just raise his knee and mess with your timing, or throw a kick, things like that. So I think the fight's a lot closer. I understand why people are favoring Ilia, and I think if you had to ask me, I probably would favor him as well, but I don't think it's gonna be like, oh, he's gonna walk through through Charles like everybody thinks.
Tejas Gamrot also voiced his support for Oliveira, pointing to experience and physicality as deciding factors. He emphasized that Oliveira has repeatedly gone to war with top-tier talent at lightweight and has consistently emerged victorious. By contrast, Tapuria has only fought at 155 pounds once, a win over Jai Herbert, and still faces questions about how his power and durability will hold up against long-established contenders.
Next month, the lightweight championship is on the line. Ilia and Charles, who do you have?
Very interesting matchup. Both guys has power and skills to get the win this fight. Like Ilia can knock him out, the Oliveira. He has heavy hands for sure. But also Charles Oliveira has a lot of good tools to beat Ilia in the ground, in the feet, everywhere. But I think Oliveira is really big guy. Ilia is short guy, and I think this is gonna be much different than the both guys, and I think that this is gonna be advantage for Charles Oliveira, and he can the win.
Sean O'Malley approached the upcoming Oliveira versus Tapuria showdown with a more even-handed viewpoint than many of his peers. He recognized the fight as a razor-close matchup, capable of going either way depending on how each fighter imposes their style. While his heart leaned slightly toward Oliveira, based on the Brazilian's history of resilience and thrilling comeback victories, O'Malley didn't ignore the dangers lurking in this particular matchup. He pointed out that Oliveira's frequent habit of absorbing clean shots has been a recurring issue throughout his career, something that could be exploited against a power striker like Tapuria, who rarely lets hurt opponents off the hook.
Could I get your read on how Tapuria versus Oliveira plays out?
Man, that's one where your heart's telling you, Charles, and your brain's telling you Ilia. It's just that one's a coin flip. Can't count Charles out. Ilia's on an absolute tear. Charles does get hit and Ilia cracks. That fight I am very excited for.
All eyes locked on UFC 317, the stakes couldn't be higher. A win for Oliveira would reaffirm his place at the top of the division and silence critics once more. A victory for Tapuria would mark the beginning of a new era, a changing of the guard as an undefeated powerhouse takes the reins in a new weight class. It's experience versus momentum, technique versus raw power, and humility versus hype.